Hey Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you?
All things considered, not bad.
All things considered. All
Sun is
things considered.
shining. We're doing a little podcast here, and
Yeah, yeah. I just turned my space heater off under my desk.
nice.
Rocking
So,
33 degrees this morning. So,
I'm sure our viewers on YouTube will probably notice that I'm sitting down today, and this actually kind of ties into our topic today
yeah.
because I broke my foot about a week ago or so, and I got to tell you, I'm going stir crazy already. I have 4.5 more weeks, according to the 6 week healing time frame.
Oh,
So, but it is very challenging for me to not be able to move around like I want to, and
yeah,
so.
yeah,
Which is a great tee into today's topic, which is kind of a book review of the book Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, and talking about kind of longevity and talking about like aging and how to think about that, how
yeah.
to start preparing now, which really ties into what we do, Dave, which is retirement planning, right? Like those two things are kind of
Right.
one and the same.
Yeah, and we've often, I know you've said some version of this to a lot of clients too over the years, but the number of people that we've worked with that where running out of money was a bigger concern than running out of health first and not being
Yeah,
able to do the things you want to do with your money.
right.
And so I view this as one of the most important books I've read in a long time for financial planning that doesn't have anything to do with actual financial planning, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. Like, if you think about it, like, if you talk to someone who can't do the things that they want to do, how much money do you think they'd give up to get their health back,
To be
right?
able to, right, right.
Probably more
And
than
so
what they have, right?
yeah, yeah. And so really what this book is getting at is how to like strategies you can put in place no matter how old you are to try to improve what's the author's word for it? Health span.
Healthspan? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the idea of health span compared to just lifespan. And in a nutshell, we've done a real good job at expanding lifespan,
yeah.
life expectancy, but we haven't done as good a job overall at expanding, at keeping our health span to match.
Yeah, it's interesting because he goes into like medicine 2.0, which is like his version of like current medicine, which is basically
Right.
like, hey, you got a disease, you got something
Yeah.
wrong with you. We can make sure you live an extra
Yeah.
10 years,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you might
You
not
have
live the way you want
diabetes.
to.
Right. Yeah. You have diabetes, so we can put you on insulin shots and we can keep things stable,
Right.
or,
Yep.
which, not that that's a bad thing, but,
No.
but when he talks about medicine 3.0, it's like thinking decades ahead. How do I prevent
Right.
getting to the point where I need to take insulin shots every day,
Yeah.
or Lipitor,
Whatever it may
or
be.
pick
Right.
your item. But I thought that was really an interesting way to think about where we're at.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about like the four horsemen as he calls them, but like the way that
Hmm.
medicine 2.0 is set up is like we'll wait until you have one of those things and then we'll tell you how to
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
extend your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We can deal with hardened arteries. We not very good at telling you in your 30s how to not have
Right.
hardened arteries when you get in your
Yeah,
70s. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So
So, and I think I love. So you wrote a blog piece on this, which we will be sure to link to the show notes here. But I love in the introduction of where you were talking about why it's important, and the line that you wrote was, "Your health and your financial plan cannot be separated," uh, which I think is fantastic. Right? Like that's why this
yeah.
is so important.
Right. Right. Um, so yeah, it all converges. It all converges at a certain
Mhm.
point. And I like what you said a minute ago about how much would you spend to get your health back once you've lost it, because I think people would
Right.
spend a lot to get a little bit back. So
Yeah,
so the
and
four horse.
just before
Sorry,
we go
go
into
ahead.
the no, before we go into the four horse, I just want to say one last point on that, which is like a lot of a lot of the people we work with are a couple years out or more to retirement, and it's always like, well, how do I account for like healthcare costs in retirement? Like you
Hmm.
hear all these, it's going up
Yeah.
fast. It's like And
Yeah.
honestly, the best thing that you can do is pick up this book and read it and take some things
Yeah.
away from it, but like start working on preventing. Spending money on prevention
Exactly.
strategies now is
Yeah.
going to ultimately help you
Yeah.
keep costs down in retirement, right?
Yeah. The old Benjamin Franklin adage of an ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure, right?
Right, exactly,
So
exactly. So yeah, tell us about the four horsemen, Dave.
so we've got coronary disease, heart issues, diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the author kind of talks about metabolic problems in like a broader sense too
Sure.
with diabetes, and then cancer
Yep.
and cognitive decline, which is on everybody's minds lately.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting in reading this. Obviously, a coronary disease to a large degree, like we know the causes of
Hmm.
it, and we know like the prevention of it, and really a lot can be said on the diabetes side as well. But the things that we don't think about are like cancer, cognitive decline. Like those are the big ones where everybody's like, "Well, I
Right.
just hope I don't get it." Right? Like
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
like, "Hey, if you do this, you won't
Yeah.
get that." And actually, the
Yeah.
problem is if you look out there in the internet, everything's going to give you cancer at one point in time, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or if you just like do Sudoku 3 times a day, you don't have to
Yeah,
worry about cognitive decline.
right.
I
Yeah,
one of the main things that I learned in this book was just like why, like I'd never really stopped to think about it. My epidemiologist daughter will like squirm when she hears me say this, but the fact that they can't, like there's no good studies on this stuff because they can't, like you can't ethically control someone's diet for 20
right,
years in a controlled scientific experiment to see what the outcome is. Like you're the
right,
control group and you're not the control group, and we're going to,
right.
feed you nothing but X
Yeah.
for 20 years.
Well, not only is it unethical, it's extremely hard to get people to
Well,
actually like buy in and like
yeah, right,
stay on the
right.
diet, right?
Right. And not fudge about it, and yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
so I thought that was really interesting, but the author comes back a few times and is like, well, you know, um we just don't know. Like
Yeah,
sometimes we just got to make informed guesses about what will likely help
right.
with Alzheimer's and things like that, because there's just not enough real answers yet.
Yeah. Well, and I love how he like starts the book out of talking about like the longest living people on Earth, right? Which
Yeah.
is the one on record is the lady that rode her bike until what, like 117. She smoked until 110. Like,
Right.
is that really what Just should everybody ststart smoking until they're 110
Yeah.
and ride
Yeah.
their
If you
bike
look at
every
if you
day?
look at
Like,
some of those profiles, yeah. Which, one of the points I think he made around that was we tend to then think, okay, well, it was just good genetics,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Well, it's good genetics and a little bit of luck and circumstances, but you know, there's no way to really deny that behavior has some kind of
right,
role when it comes to beating the odds of these things.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, um, what about the centenarian decathlon idea? I thought that was a neat tie-in to some of the stuff we do with financial planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kind of the basic premises goes into comparing it to kind of how we do financial planning and retirement planning is like, what's that vision of what you want to be able to do, right? Like,
Yeah,
what's most important to you? What do you want to be able to do as you age? And get
yeah,
that vision of what that is, and then you should be able to do 2 to 3 times that when you're depending on how long
right,
away you are. So you really need
right.
to like work on being able to physically do much more than that now, so that as you
Yeah,
age and things drop off, you can still do the thing that you want to do, right?
yeah. So basically, his centenarian decathlon is to think about the things you'd like to be able to do during the last decade of your life. List 10 physical things. Pick your grandchild up off the floor. Put your own carry-on in the overhead bin on the airplane.
Right.
List these things out. Walk your dogs in the woods for half an hour a day.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you want to be able, if you, we're gonna age and we're gonna lose muscles and we're gonna lose strength and we're gonna lose stability and balance. So if you want to be able to bend over and pick up a 20-pound toddler when you're 80, you better be able to pick up a 50-pound dumbbell,
Right.
when you're 45.
Yeah.
And so wherever you are, you need to shoot higher than where you want to be,
Right.
because gravity will take you there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it makes sense. Like it's common sense, but we
sure.
don't often talk about it that way, right? Like we don't think about
Yeah,
it that way. It's always just like, hey, I probably should exercise, right?
yeah, yeah.
But that
Now,
that goes into like the behavioral, psychology of like what's going to motivate you to do that, and what do
yeah,
how do you set your goals and make sure you're making progress towards those goals, right?
right. So what do we do?
Yeah, so he really kind of lays out 3 to 4 different things about what we can and should be doing now. Like, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how old you are or where you're at. It's kind of like, hey, pick up wherever you're at and start doing these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I love about it too, which I know that you didn't love so much, is like, there's no, well, I guess the 3 things are exercise, diet, and sleep, and you can also throw mental well-being in there, right? We can talk about
Mm-hmm.
it a little bit. But what he doesn't do is give you like, hey, this is exactly your
This is the
exercise
diet. Yeah,
routine. Yeah, this is the
yeah.
diet, which is annoying because we all want that kind of like silver bullet of this is the best way to do it. Just go do this thing.
Right,
But
right.
the reality is that nobody has figured it out, right? And there's so much
Yeah,
misinformation out there, and everybody's
yeah.
going to be different as in regards to that.
So he boils it down to find a diet that works for you. The
Yep.
typical American diet, what's he call it? He has an acronym for it. The
Ooh.
something American diet, the
Yeah.
standard American diet, the SAD he
Yeah.
calls it,
Yeah.
doesn't work. Doesn't work for
Right.
most. Like if you just follow the standard American diet, you are probably going to have diabetes, cancer, coronary
Right.
disease, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
so so whether it's vegetarianism, veganism, reducing, cutting your carbs, whatever diet strategy you can create for yourself that works and you can stick with, that's the right one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would have loved to there just be like, here's exactly what you should do.
Right.
But I've come around to the wisdom of that approach, because it kind of echoes what we tell people about budgeting, right? I don't care if you use a yellow legal pad or the fanciest app in the world or a spreadsheet or sit down with your bills once a month. I don't care. Just
Right.
find a system that you can stick with that will work.
Right.
and
Well, and the
and
basic principle too of like you have a budget so that you actually end up spending less than what's
yeah,
coming in, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's kind of similar in diet. Is like the whole goal is to eat
yeah,
less.
yeah,
There's that part has been proven pretty well that like your calorie restriction is a good
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
Like have some sort of baseline for that.
yeah. And similarly in the exercise realm, he paints with broad strokes, but there were some specifics in there. Everybody should do strength training because we don't count on how much muscle mass we lose, and
Yep.
that was a bit eye opening for me because I've kind of blown off strength training, a bit over the
Yeah.
last few years. So, um, and a lot of it I thought was good in that, like, he's not saying everybody's got to go out and train for a marathon. For most people, just, several hours of brisk walking a week does a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
And, um,
Well, it's funny because he also goes into talking about like how that stuff maybe isn't very healthy,
right.
right? Like he talks about his biking and his
Yeah.
like where when it goes to the extreme, it actually ends up doing more harm than good in some
Yeah.
cases, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but the bottom, like my main takeaway is he kind of sums it up that, diet and exercise, like what's good for your heart is good for your brain health,
Hmm.
is good for staving off diabetes. Like these things, like diet and exercise take care of a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
And, like the chapter on diets, he basically says all these people that are all caught up in this controversy over which diet is best would be better served to just forget about it and go out for a walk, get more
Yeah.
exercise.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, stop wasting your mental energy on which diet you should be on. Go
Right.
go go get more exercise, because that's the main thing.
Yeah, well, he talks about like just how hard it is, and it makes common sense when you think about it. But he talked about how hard it is to do studies around
Hmm.
diet because it's not like you can keep a human in a lab and just give
Right.
them meals and like and make sure they eat what's on the diet, right? They're going to go out and you're
Yeah.
going to tell them to do
Yeah.
these things, and they're going to do it sometimes and not other times, but they're probably going to tell you that they did it the whole time. And
Right.
so like the study is doomed from the beginning, right?
Right. Right.
But I do like, going back to exercise, he did talk a lot about like being zone two training,
Hmm.
and doing a lot of that. And then also stability training, which is the
Yes.
one big thing that I took out of that too. Stability training, like we all kind of know it's important. Obviously, the people that have listened for long enough know that, I'm kind of a gym rat and like exercise and have to do like a daily amount of it, which is why my broken foot is really throwing me for a loop. But the stability training that's the stuff that's quote unquote easy. You can do it
Right.
anywhere, you can do it anytime, but man, is it boring. And man, is it hard to get into a routine of like, hey,
Yeah.
let's do this
Yeah.
stability training, right? It's
Yeah.
like the easiest, most common sense stuff, and it's probably super important, but it's just so boring
Yeah.
that it's hard to
Yeah.
get a
I'm not
rhythm in it.
not telling anybody I'm going to start yoga anytime soon.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
Certainly not going to talk about it. But
Right,
so one thing that I think ties all this stuff together, and kind of like your broken foot situation, I think is kind of like leads into this too, because I was there 18 months ago, had a
right,
broken ankle, same kind of thing. And there's a certain point where your mindset can go either way, right? And I know people that have had a similar situation where it's been like, oh, I guess I'm just that person now who got out of shape,
right.
and but I had it's like a license to just be that person,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or you can take your mindset and say, no, I need to, as soon as I'm out of this walking boot, I'm,
right.
going to do my physical therapy and get right back on track as fast as I can. And like we talk with clients, older clients, about like their house, and it's like baked into people's expectations at a certain point that, hey, I'm going to need everything on one floor, I'm going to need a barrier free tub.
Yep,
Well, yes, I'm not going to tell a client, no, we shouldn't prepare for that. But after reading this book, I'm a little like, at least with some clients, if they're open to it, pushing back on that inevitability a little bit.
right,
Like, hey, yeah, you're right. We may need to do that. But why don't we should do everything we can to put that off as long as we can. It's not
right.
inevitable.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And
So,
I mean, my parents are famous for saying this because they have large staircases in their houses. But like,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, you want everything on one floor, but guess what? Walking up those stairs every day is going to keep you from
that's
having to be on that
yeah,
floor,
and
right?
it becomes a spiral, right? Not a
Exactly.
spiral staircase, but
Right.
bad analogy,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. So it's
So,
it's definitely interesting, and I love in the book the I think it was his friend's mom who was like an avid tennis player, played
mhm,
tennis all the time, got hurt and wasn't went into
and
that trap that
never,
you were talking about, was like, I
yep,
can't do anything anymore, and then it's either a wake up call or a death sentence, right? Like
right, right. It can go. There's a
depending on how you
point where it
take
can go
that.
either way. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So, um, we shouldn't gloss over the section on sleep health, which I
yeah,
struggle with. I'm a bit of an insomniac. I always have been.
yeah.
So I've been trying to add a little more quality sleep time in. He does have some
Yep.
good strategies to consider there, but
Well, it's funny
that's
because I always find, I'm a pretty good sleeper. And what I
mhm,
find is, the more you exercise, the better your
yeah,
sleep is. The better
yeah,
your diet is, the better your sleep is.
yep,
And if you stay away from the stimulants or, the alcohols or whatever, the better your
yeah,
sleep is, right? And
yeah,
so, like, this is kind of a snowball effect of like, once you get these things working in unison, they all kind of
right,
play into each other too, right?
right, right, for sure, for sure.
So,
Well,
And then the last one that he kind of threw in there, which I found super fascinating, was the mental well being, the mental health
yeah,
part of it. And I found it
yeah.
fascinating because you didn't really have any inclination of it, but the
Well,
last chapter is kind of his story of like, hey, I was writing this book,
right. Yeah.
I was doing all these things, but my mental health wasn't right. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And nobody wants to talk about this,
yeah, oh
but
yeah,
his point really, I mean, to put it as bluntly as possible, is what's the point of expanding your lifespan and your health span if you're not happy?
yeah,
You know,
exactly,
so
right,
it is interesting. Again, there's not a lot of easy answers to that. Um, my take on it was just be aware of your mental health and do what you can in do what you can, and a lot of times just paying attention to it
right,
is
yeah.
is is half the battle, because we don't like to talk about it.
Right. Well, and I think too, like going back to our, life planning process of like figuring out what's most important to you, like that goes a long way of into this whole thing, right? Like if you know what
Hmm.
what's most important to you, if it's relationships, like making sure you're maintaining and keeping those and using your time and keeping your health up so you can maintain those things, like then now we have all four of those things working together, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's and that breeds better happiness, and it's all it's all a big circle, right?
Right.
One thing feeds on the other, and the better off it is for you and for everyone. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I thought it
So,
was a fascinating book, a really a great read. Every retiree, no matter where you're at, you should probably read it. But I love that this concept, this idea, in conjunction with you're getting ready to retire, you're thinking about all these things, and now let's think about like, hey, we're all excited about doing all these things, and now we have the financial side of it. Like, hey, we've gone
yep.
through, we've ran the numbers, and now we know you can do these things, and here's the health side of it. Let's make sure on the health side you can do all those things for as long as
Yeah.
you want to,
And
right?
enjoy it.
And
Right.
enjoy it. Exactly. So it
Right.
all kind of,
Right.
as you put it, right? Your health and your financial plan can't be separated. So this is a great book and a great thought process to think about that. I was actually listening to Kitsis and Carl episode, and like one of the big takeaways that I hope everybody that's listening to this is, yes, there's a lot of things in there. Yes, there's a lot of life
Hmm.
changes, but as Carl likes to say, what's the smallest first step you can take now?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
pick one of these things, even if it's like, hey, I'm going to take a 15-minute walk every day or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah.
smallest first step that you can take? Because
Yeah.
getting that first step, moving in that direction, is like, it doesn't have to be grandiose. You don't have to change everything all at once, because that is a recipe for not being
You'll burn
successful over the
out.
long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start
So,
small. Let's pick one thing that you think you can do and start with that, right?
yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point.
So with
Good.
that, Dave,
Well,
now I got to ask you, what is the one small thing that you're going to do? I'm pretty sure you're already
well,
doing it. So
so I'm a month out of having finished this book myself, and 3 out of 4 weeks I've managed to get in a strength training workout
that's
5 days a
awesome.
week. So,
Fantastic.
I can move my arms again today. After yesterday, I wasn't so sure.
Yeah.
I was all right. And, for me, part of it was validating that the long, brisk walks I've been taking are probably doing me good, because I broke my leg 18 months ago, and
Yeah.
that was the end of my running career, such as it was.
Right.
But, um, you know, having I kind of was wondering if I needed to get back to that. And, he talks about cardio exercise, but it doesn't have to be running. And so,
Hmm.
like, the next thing I need to add in, and so I guess my next small thing will be trying to get in a couple of interval workouts every week on my stationary bike to
Yeah.
replace that.
Love it.
So,
Absolutely love it.
yeah.
So mine's probably not going to be any surprise, and that is, well, maybe somewhat surprising, but general foot health. He actually talked about toe yoga in the book, which is something that I've
Oh,
heard about before.
so I
It is
have
like the
done
hardest
that.
thing I've ever
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah, that was so that was part of my physical therapy
Yeah.
with so having been, first of all, trying to do toe yoga when you haven't had your foot in a boot for
Right.
I was on 6 months at that point. Is not easy. Try it. Read it. Just read up on it and try it. I dare you.
Yeah.
But then trying to do it when your foot has basically been immobilized for
Yeah.
it's almost 6 months. I felt like I was in one of those paraplegic movies, like just wiggle your toe if you can hear
Right.
me kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it was like I'm staring at it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, try it. It will humble you. It
Yep.
will
So
humble you, but
I'm
it's also
gonna
very good.
my
Yes.
small step is gonna be when this foot heals, toe yoga and
Toe
overall
yoga.
general foot health
Yes.
and
Yes.
stability in the feet. So that's what I'm
Stability.
going for.
Yes. Yep. I love it. Good.
So as always, been a pleasure, Dave. To our listeners out there, if you have any ideas or small steps that you want to share with us, in the behavioral finance or the behavioral psychology world, one of the biggest steps you can take is putting your step out in the universe. So feel free to share with us at info@srbadvisors.com. We'd love to hear about what you're planning on, what your progress is. And as always, Dave, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
It was fun, Nick. Thanks.
This is a Zedia Media production.